Welcome to the Couples Academy show. What are you doing? Stop messing up my flow. Can we start this again?
Wait,
Can we start this again? We're live with these people.
Didn't we say I was going to do the intro?
We said I was going to. See, this is what happens, folks, when... You know what I'm saying? So let's try this again. Welcome to the Couples Academy show. My name is Hassani.
And I'm Danielle, the one that was supposed to bring the intro. And this is the Couples Academy show. And we are super excited to be with you today because it's a beautiful day.
It's a beautiful day.
It's Thursday. And we're about to bring to you some transformational tips that's going to change your lives. So make sure when you come on that you say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. We have people watching from all over the world, and it's so cool to see all the different locations coming through. All right, now you can go.
Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. You can find us anywhere. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, but you can go to the YouTube channel and subscribe there as well as Facebook. That way you know that we are constantly here.
Always
and you get notifications when we go live.
Yes.
Listen, there's so much going on in the world that we've been watching on television. Yeah. I tell you, it's like every day there's something different. And listen, we're living in history. For the first time ever, the President of the United States has been impeached twice.
Wow.
That's so significant. First time were for other reasons, but this time, because of the recent incident that happened by people storming the Capitol after messaging that was given by our president.
Yes.
And it just really speaks to the power of communication, that when you say things, it can go pretty bad.
When you say things that matters and you can't take it back, our word is powerful and strong, and so strong that it can motivate mobs. This is why we have to be careful what we say and who's the leader and what they're saying, because it will motivate mobs to do crazy things. Now, storming the Capitol, that's huge.
That's serious.
But what if you motivated people to do other things, right? So this is why it has come to this. It's almost like it's bringing the nation to the knees historically, having had a president impeached twice. And so we want to talk to you today about this communication.
Yeah, because, you know, people are having some difficult conversations on the news, online, in homes and schools, on public squares, just all over the place. There's a lot of challenging conversations. And so, you know, we don't deal with politics, but it's relevant to talk about this stuff. So we want to talk about difficult conversations today.
I just want to welcome some people. We got everybody telling us where they're from. We have Los Angeles in the house. Hey, Jay, good to see you. Facebook, Clarence, good to see you. Good morning. Miss Graves from Germany, thank you for joining us. Torre, good to see you this morning. Dee from Gatesburg, Maryland. Smurf is with us. Zach is with us. Elizabeth is with us from Michigan. Hopeless. Good to see all of you guys. Make sure that you are always liking, sharing, and subscribing. When you get on and join us, share it with a friend.
Absolutely.
Let that be your morning ritual. Get on with your coffee, your tea, and share us with a friend. And also don't forget to hit that notification bell so you get notified with us every morning.
And so in line with our topic today, difficult conversations, we have a question that came from Papi Ibutoy, which says, what is the secret to having a difficult conversation when your partner is sensitive, defensive, and doesn't think anything is wrong with him or her? What a powerful question, and we want to tackle that on the other side. So listen, we'll be right back. We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, founders of Couples Academy, a private practice dedicated to saving marriages around the world.
We're not just recognized authorities on relationships. We're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission? To change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships.
This is the Couples Academy show. All right, folks, we're back. We're talking about difficult conversations, and in fact, our topic for today is the 9 tips. I don't have 19 today, but we have 9 tips for having a difficult conversation with your partner. Because here's the reality: couples are going through, there are all types of challenges that they're experiencing, and sometimes difficult conversations could be on a variety of different topics. Now, obviously, you know us for infidelity recovery. So many people are dealing with the facts and the details of an affair, and talking about it with that partner is very, very difficult. Some people struggle having financial conversations.
Yeah, or parenting conversations.
In-law conversations.
Yes, or just being intimate and transparent about things that bother them. You know, depending on your personality style, you might have to deal with somebody who is passive aggressive. And so if you're a passive aggressive person, you don't really confront things head on. You have to kind of know and understand the person's patterns and see, okay, something's up, and know how to do that. So this is really about navigating these personalities and learning how to speak to each other in a way that'll get through.
Some people are very defensive. No matter what is said, they're always on the defense with their guard up, their dukes up, and ready to get into a fight. There's some people who just shut down. You know, anytime they're confronted with anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, literally the wall goes up, they shut down, and they enter into their cocoon. And it's like having a conversation with yourself because they're not willing to engage. And so there are all types of defense mechanisms that people engage in that keeps them from being able to be effective in experiencing breakthrough. So we want to talk about the 9 things that we need to begin to do to have effective breakthrough conversation. And so we want you to take notes today because we're going to be going through this quickly. Number 1, you've got to give up your need to be right. I think you may have heard us share that before, because oftentimes we're seeking to be understood instead of seeking to understand, and we have to make our point, and we've got to get it out, and we've got a 3-point a plan to what it is we want to say, and we're convincing and we're persuasive, and we come with energy and passion. And so when you enter into a conversation believing that you are right, by default your spouse is absolutely wrong.
Right.
And so it becomes a right-wrong scenario. And even if you win, you ultimately lose because you two are not on the same page.
Right, and you're completely breaking the laws of communication because you have blinders on at that point, right? So this person is speaking to you, and you have put on blinders, and all you see in front of you is your point. And you are concentrating and focusing on your point because you don't want to lose your space in your mind or what you wanted to say. So you didn't even hear what the other person is saying because you got the blinders on, and your goal, your finish line is getting your point across and not hearing.
Absolutely.
So in order for you to be willing to not always be right, you have to suspend your argument. These are rules of communication. You suspend thinking, processing your point of view so that you can hear what the person is saying. You need to understand, this is the way that our brains work, that when you open up your heart and mind to actually hear and listen, you'll never lose a proper response. And that's really what it's about, the proper response. Because how many times are you getting into an argument with your spouse and that you said all of this stuff? You probably had a soliloquy. You probably went a little bit too long, but your spouse was holding on, not breaking the rules of interruption. And by the time they get to the end of it, you have forgotten your point, right? You've completely lost your space. So what you do is you're like firing off your points. And what's frustrating is I almost lost my point. What's frustrating is when you get to the end of the conversation and the person responds to you in a way that had nothing to do with what you said. That is so frustrating. It's just like, did you even hear what I said? Yeah, I heard what you said. And you know what they usually do is call out the very last thing that you said because that's all they heard before they jumped in like double judge to make their point. So how do we do this? How do we stop this need to be right? Is actually suspend your thoughts, your argument, allow that person to speak to you and be in a position of receiving, because you will always respond with the proper response when you've heard the person.
I was in a session late last night, and the couple, they were making their points with one another, and I was so proud because one of them said, you know what? I'm willing to be wrong. And I love that. I love that because even though he felt he was right, he said, listen, I'm willing to be wrong, which ultimately says, I'm willing to be taught. I'm willing to have a different opinion, a different perspective, if you can show me another way. And when you leave that open, that window open, to be able to receive and gain something new that you didn't have before, it really allows you to experience a level of breakthrough without shutting your partner down.
Well, number 2 says, choose the right time to talk. And this is so important. You never want to, get into an argument because when somebody walks in the door, you've pigeonholed them, right? And you're like, I want to talk to you about something. What that does right away is that gets you into an aggressive, hostile situation because the person is so caught off guard, right? You haven't even allowed them to come in the door and you're already berating them with facts and details or whatever has frustrated you. And so it's really important for you to be mindful about the time, because again, it's not about being right. It's about being heard. That's what communication is more about. If you are focused only on being right, then you may not end up with the right result. You know, attacking somebody with the insults or the issues at hand and not giving them the time that they need to process isn't necessarily going to reap you the results that you want. And if you want it to go well, you want to give that person the space and the time. Know your spouse. Know when is the great time to talk to them. Let them unwind and preface what it is that you want to come to them with so that their defenses are down.
And ask your spouse, you know, what would be a good time for us to have a conversation? Because there's some things that I definitely want to talk about. Like, for instance, if I'm not a morning person, that's the wrong time to come to me with a conversation. If I have to be up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, then trying to talk at 11 o'clock at night when I should be preparing for bed and be in my third sleep, that's not the right time to have the conversation. So you can have the right conversation at the wrong time and it produce the wrong thing. Oftentimes we see this all the time. I'm at work, I'm in meetings, and my phone is just blowing up. I got all these voicemails. You're texting me, like you're terror texting me. It's not a good time. Can we pick up at it? Because if I'm frustrated because this conversation is happening at the wrong time, I'm already defensive. My walls are already up. I'm just shut down. It's just not going to go well. Yeah. So timing contributes to the environment that is necessary for you to have a positive conversation. Point number 3, start the conversation positively. That's so critically important because oftentimes, to be honest, we are so tempted to talk when we're frustrated, when we're in our emotions, when we're in our feelings, and I need to tell you something, and we need to talk right now. And it's just like, really? That's what you want to do? Because the moment you bring emotions into the situation, it's going to go to hell in a handbasket.
And back.
Right? And so you have to make sure you use the word preface, which I think is so critically important. You have to preface the conversation, and you want to come in with the right tone. As you know, your tonality, your facial expressions, body language, nonverbals, all of that is the major portion of the way you communicate. And if you are off-putting in the way that you show up, your spouse is just going to shut down. So lowering your voice, check this out. Even holding one's hand, babe, you know, there's something that I kind of want to talk about, and you know, I just want to make sure that we stay in a positive mode and we're able to hear each other's heart. And you know, if I say something that, you know, rubs you the wrong way, just know my heart as I'm saying. You know, those are the type of things you want to do to make the environment conducive.
I agree 100%. So the next one is stay focused on the problem at hand. And I think it's so frustrating when we get into these discussions, right? And your spouse wants to bring up historical wrongs, right? We'll say things like, can we please focus on the topic at hand? And that example that Hassani gave about how you preface things and how you come to somebody calmly and, babe, I just want to, well, when you do that and then somebody brings up ancient historical things when we're talking about something that happened today that's a problem, now you may as well have just stepped on the bomb, because now there's an explosion. This is why it's a culmination of things that you have to do to protect this conversation so that you get the end result. Because when we go into the history and we're bringing up things that had nothing to do with today, now we're triggered. Now you're shutting your partner down. They don't feel like they can communicate with you. And this is oftentimes why they just don't talk to you. Because every time they try to talk to you, they can't ever get one thing resolved. The thing that's before you today never gets resolved. And guess what? That thing also gets swept under the rug of history, never dealt with. So let's stick with the issue at hand.
Absolutely. Stick with the issue at hand. All right, the next point number 5. While your partner is talking, just listen. Now, listen, we all have challenges, right? So my challenge, folks, my challenge with communication.
Hold on. Before you tell it, let me just put my pinky up real quick. See if I can. Okay, there.
Yeah.
This is tea. Even though this is coffee, this is tea. What you about to spill?
I'm spilling tea. Is that what I'm doing? So my issue with communication is interruptions. Yeah,
okay. Free yourself. May the truth set you free.
I interrupt. That's what I do. That's what I do. Because I have so much on my mind and so much on my heart and so much I want to say that, you know, oftentimes that's what kind of happens. And so it's almost like you use the word double dutch, like she's jumping and I'm ready to get in. I'm good at the two. I'm going for it. See, that's the other thing, right?
I'm a better arguer, right? So I'm going for it. I'm hitting all the points and this and that and the third.
Wait.
I am.
Well, first of all, is that something to brag about?
Yeah, it is. If I were a lawyer. Yeah, it is if I were a lawyer.
Not in a relationship.
And it is as a coach. And it is as a coach. You know why? Because I have to convince you of how wonderful you are. But I'm a better arguer, right? I'm coming with the points. I'm hitting it. I'm quick, right? So that will trigger the desire to interrupt because I'm going so fast. And if Hassani doesn't feel like he's going to get a point and he's going to miss it. These are the rules of engagement. So if I was slower, if I was listening and had my heart open for these arguments, Hassani wouldn't have to interrupt, but he does have the interruption problem.
And so you want to learn how to listen, right? And there's different ways to listen. Listening can show up like this. Mm-hmm. So it's active listening. It's just like I'm giving you eye contact and I'm giving you a visual acknowledgement that I'm hearing what you're saying by, it's a nonverbal.
Yes.
It's a nonverbal.
Yes.
And so oftentimes it's important that you do that. Also, another way to let the person know that you're listening is to communicate back to them.
Well, that's the next point. That's the next point. Because what I wanted to say is that when it comes to that listening and that body language part that Hassani's talking about, making sure that your body language is non-aggressive is also important because to Hassani's point, you could be sitting there listening like, and you can have your eyes wide open and be attentive and, managing your heart rate and really being consciously present and letting the person know, heart, body, soul, and mind, that you are trying to hear them. That all that energy translates. All that energy is felt and understood. But at the same time, if you're listening with a spirit of aggression, that translates as well. Like,
yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's a whole different energy. So now you're projecting that to your partner. So it's important to think about that as well. And then the next one does talk about reflect back what your partner is saying. So in that calm listening with an open heart, you would say, let me just make sure I understood what you said. Okay, so what you're saying is that the issue is X, Y, and Z in the third. And when I did that, you felt like X, Y, Z in the third. Is that correct? See how open-hearted that is? But it still matters how you do it.
It does.
Because if I'm doing it with attitude, if I'm being cynical about it, if I got face and facial expressions going on and energy going on and heat and it's all built up in my chest, you're not going to receive it in the same way if
Absolutely.
I really am honestly trying to understand and hear and reflect back to you what I understood.
That's right. We got a lot of comments. So number one, Tori says, I'm with you, Hassani. So am I. I think she was talking about in terms of her being an interrupter. And then Kia says, can somebody make a say it again button? I need to push it because they're really resonating with what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And this is the reality, guys. Like, this is the biggest challenge that people have in their relationships.
Yes.
Communication.
Right.
And what happens is we accumulate ideas and we pick up habits along the way that are not effective, that are not productive, and we carry them into our relationships. And it's just like, you know what? If we could learn how to check ourselves and begin to evaluate how we're showing up, it's less about what our partner's doing and more about what we're doing, and we need to be conscious of that because it is a two-way street. We just have a tendency to always look at what they're doing and how they're showing up, and we don't self-assess ourselves. And so it takes two to make a relationship work. It takes two to make a thing go right. And if you show up the right way, you can have a positive influence on your partner in terms of how you particularly engage. Let's go to the next point. Point number 7, you have to learn how to fight fair. Even in war, there are rules of engagement, right? Even in war with nations. So likewise, in a relationship, if you're gonna get into a fight, you wanna make it a good fight. And I think a lot of times we are so grimy in terms of what we do, and it's just like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going in, and I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and whatever the consequences are, we just going to have to deal with it. And many of us lose our minds. And as they say, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never harm you is a lie. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will kill you. Words will do what sticks and stones cannot. And it's hard to take words back once you've released them, because when you speak words to your partner, you're speaking those words into your partner. And the impact that it has on their heart, their mind, their emotions, is incredible. There's a lot of fragility in relationships, and it happens because of the choice words that we use. And so bringing up the past, right? Or always using tactics that we know will blow, hitting under the belt, throwing insults, calling someone else out of their name, bringing in family members, things that you know that will trigger that partner just to shut them down, just to win, is not effective and will always cause more harm than good. And what happens is when you're in a bad place and you're in your emotions, when you try to engage in a conversation, it never goes well. So you got to be mindful of how you're showing up, even in that regard.
Absolutely. The next one says, try to find something that you agree about. And we, Hassan and I talk about this all the time. We are so comfortable in disagreement. It's where we kind of just escape the whole problem altogether. Well, we can agree to disagree. Well, I can have my opinion. I don't have to have your mindset or see it the way that you see it. But at the end of the day, your power and your connection, that thing that allows you to move forward, is in agreement. The power of agreement is what Hassani and I call the marriage mastermind. It's a magnificent gift that God gave to marriages, where you can get into alignment on something and make something happen. And that's just a simplified way of saying it. But if we're always determined to agree to disagree, which is where people usually land, you're not going to have that alignment. So even when the argument it ends and you just really don't agree, you have your perspective, they have theirs, you think you're right, they think they're right. You can always look into the details and find something to agree about. Even if it means, you know what, we've talked about this long enough, let's just agree to circle back to this conversation. Let's agree right now to end this right now, and we'll talk about it tonight. Let's agree right now that we're going to resolve this. Let's agree that we actually need to work on our marital problems,
Yeah, absolutely.
We can always find something to agree about.
I totally agree. And then point number 9, the last point, take a timeout if you must. Take a timeout. Sometimes you have to push pause, take a break. Like when you think about a fight, even boxers in a ring, they're in that ring for 3 minutes, and then guess what? They have a break. They can go back to their corners, they can breathe, they can get some water, they can get their strategy, and then they re-engage. Even though I don't care what sport you watch, it's going to be the same situation where there are breaks that you can regroup and you can get your strategy together. And oftentimes when you're in a heated exchange, you need to push pause,
Yes.
you need to calm down, and you need to release those negative emotions.
Yes.
And then when you come back together, you're coming back together, in a better emotional state.
Yes.
Because what happens is whatever thought you think, it is emotionalized.
Yes.
And if you have a negative emotionalized thought, it will always go to hell once again. It really will.
I mean, it does. And there's a method to this. You can take a pause, like, you agree in advance. These things, you sit down with your spouse. I hope you've taken notes. You sit down with your spouse and say, okay, these are the rules of engagement. This is how we are going to deal with issues. And so you've already established that when things get heated, and I've used this analogy before where it's like a meter, like a thermometer, right? The thermometer is green at the bottom, and then as it warms up, it gets to yellow, and then it warms up again and it gets to red. Well, right between red and yellow, it's about to happen. You feel it wherever you feel it. If you're a head person, it's like you're overthinking it and you're getting frustrated and your thoughts are getting confused and you're about to shut down. If you're a heart person, you're feeling brokenhearted and overwhelmed in the heart. If you're a gut person, you're feeling anger and it's starting to heat up and you're about to be explosive. We all know that point, that breaking point for ourselves. That's when you call a timeout. Wait, is it this way? I wasn't really good at sport. Okay. Call the timeout.
I get it.
Call the timeout and take at least 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Cool off and get yourself together. For some, it might take a little bit longer, maybe even up to 2 hours to take a break, but just don't let it go into the next day. Take that break, calm down, and then come back to the subject. That's what you want to do so that it doesn't become overly explosive and you can manage your emotions, and you're both in agreement to do this so it works when
Absolutely.
you do that.
There's so many comments. Let's go to the comments. Tanya says, hurt people hurt people. Absolutely true. And oftentimes we're triggered by each other in terms of how we show up. We have another comment from Boss Lady. Exactly. It takes two to make the conversation successfully work. I'm doing it right now, but my spouse is defensive, which upsets me, and it all goes left. And we were talking about that earlier in the show, about the defensiveness that we bring in. And we all have defense mechanisms, right? So typically, and I'm not pointing you out, boss lady, but typically we all identify what our spouse is doing. Okay, so if your spouse is defensive, how can you diffuse that? How can you show up?
Yeah.
Right? Knowing, okay, I know whatever the conversation is going to be. I know my spouse is going to show up a certain way. So how do I approach? It's just like you figure out all these different strategies until you figure out what actually works.
That's why it's important for us to know our spouse. You talk about, you have the book of Daniel, right? And we have all these books in the Bible and other spiritual books. Well, these things are notes and scriptures and passages and historical things that you've learned, right? So it's like, okay, I know Daniel don't like being interrupted. Right? Make a mental note. You learn about your spouse so that you are able to say, okay, I know exactly how I need to approach them. I have this issue, right? I'm going to come to them calmly. I'm going to give them, when they come home from work, because this is a major issue I want resolved, I'm going to open the door, give them a hug, have a seat, and just say, you know, babe, I want to have a conversation with you later tonight. When's a good time for us to do that? They tell you when it is, because this is all established. You take care of them. You do what you usually do, whether it's making dinner, cleaning up, whatever it is. And then you sit down. You grab that hand. You say, babe, I wanted to talk to you about something. You said it's a good time right now. Is it still a good time? Yes, it is. And now you go into that conversation and you start to implement the rules that you know. You know, when you start to feel frustrated because you're feeling unheard, you calm down, roll back. You hold your tongue when you want to interrupt and jump over that person because you got to get to a point. You ask the person instead, hey, could you just slow down, because I really want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying and I don't want to feel like I'm missing a point. So could you slow down so I can receive what it is that you're saying? Yes. Then the person slows down. Then they're heard. Then you repeat back to them, let me just make sure I heard you correctly. So when you said so-and-so, I understood. Is that correct? Yes, it's understood. Okay, so here's what I would add to that. Do you see, like, if we just practice self-control, emotional intelligence, and very simple practical tips like this,
yes,
you can avoid so many disruptions and arguments in your house between you and your spouse.
You better believe it. I hope that these tips are helping you, because I know that they've helped us in our relationship. We want you to watch this video, play it again and again and again. You know, you have many questions, and unfortunately we're at the end of our show, but I just want to let you know that we write these questions down and we reserve them because we will come back and talk to you about it. You know, tomorrow's Friday, and tomorrow, as you know, is Relationship Q&A. We want you to get your questions ready so that we can engage in an amazing conversation. But if you want to be a better communicator in your relationship, then you should learn about the Better Marriage Club. The Better Marriage Club was set up and designed to help you have a better marriage. And so there's a lot that comes along with that. All of you who are watching this show, you've been committed to the daily stream. Why don't you take your relationship to the next level and join a community of people who will help you? And so all you need to do is text right now at 973-490-4668, the Better Marriage Club. You can start it today. In fact, I want to give you more information about that. So stay right tuned, and we'll be right back on the other side of this. Sign up today for the Better Marriage Club and receive exclusive access to the private Facebook group to get your questions answered and your problems solved. Access to our marriage library of live seminars. Watch the Couples Academy Daily Show. Call the help hotline for laser coaching. Get our weekly action guides and receive a private one-on-one call with one of our marriage coaches. To join the Better Marriage Club, simply text MARRIAGE to 973-490-4668. Join today. Your marriage deserves it. So guys, have you enjoyed today's show? I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Now listen, for those of you who have questions, sometimes you're watching the show and a question comes up after the fact. We want you to be able to text us, once again, 678 200-8996. But you can also email us at info@couplesacademy.org. We do read and respond to those emails, and when it's appropriate, we'll bring it on the show and share the goodness with others. But listen, guys, hope you enjoyed today. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Let the community that you are a part of be enhanced because of our daily conversation. All right, we'll see you in the morning for another great episode. It's Relationship Q&A. Love you guys. You've been listening to the Couples Academy Show.
If you would like to be a guest on our show, or if you're interested in one of our restoration programs, contact us today at couplesacademy.org.